Sophomore.
Sophomore in high school? Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. You want to get started?
Sure.
Like officially get started for the day?
Okay.
So what is this? Monday, April 11th, 2016. I wrote 2015 on my paper. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. So last time we talked about Mississippi. Is that right?
Yeah.
Vicksburg. Vicksburg. You're 2 years in Vicksburg, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then, so while you were there, you essentially got a job opportunity, a job offer to move to Washington, D.C., right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about that. So you got that opportunity, that job offer, right?
Yes.
And then said, let's do it. Let's move.
Yes.
And you did.
So, yes, I heard from them by telegram,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to send them back one saying that I was accepting,
Mm-hmm.
and they sent me one where to report to the Navy Department on Constitution Avenue in Washington, D.C.
And what year was that? Where are we right now?
1940.
40. Okay.
So my sister took me down to get a ticket, and we go into the
airplane ticket you're talking about,
No.
right?
No, we
not
travel
airplane
by
ticket.
train.
Right.
So we get a ticket buy the ticket, and when we go into the building, I see where the counter is, and one counter, and I go over to that, and my sister came and took me by my arm and said, "No, this is not the right line." And then I looked up, and it said for colored only.
Ooh.
I know.
Wow.
And I was innocent enough on all those years of dealing with the black people, with colored people, as we called them then, that I was quite surprised. I thought, we're going on the same train.
Mm-hmm.
And we buy tickets at a different counter.
That's crazy.
So I got my ticket, and
then there you go.
so, yeah.
So wait, you just went there, you got your ticket, and then now it's like, all right, I'm leaving. See ya. just that quick?
There's nothing really that stands out in my mind that any dramatic part of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember if I traveled on the same day that I got the ticket. I think I might have gotten that.
Right.
And then on the day we decided I left, I boarded the train, and I did buy a Pullman ticket.
I don't know what that is.
That is the sleeper car. I was going to be on there 2 nights.
2 nights.
This is a long trip.
How long did it take? It took 2 nights to get there?
Yes, I left it. I think it was around 2:00 in the afternoon on Saturday.
Right.
And we traveled all night, that rest of that day, and all night. And then that must have been on Friday.
That seems crazy. Was there so many stops, or is it just the trains went slow? You know?
Both.
Really? That's weird.
Yeah. It wasn't that slow. It felt like we were flying, when we started. But we traveled all that day, and then all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning I arrived. But that was quite an experience on being on the train where there was a porter who showed you your sleeping berth. And I chose the top berth.
Interesting.
How do you know who's going to be on the lower bunk,
So wait, you went to D.C. by yourself, or did you just
Yes.
go with you? So you took the
Yes.
train by yourself. Was it the first time you'd been on a train?
Yes.
First time you've been on a train by yourself, moving away to D.C. in a sleeper car with strangers.
Of course.
Of course. And, what kind of stuff did you bring? Like, how much stuff are you bringing with you?
Oh.
You know?
Well, that brings me to the trunk.
Okay.
I didn't know how much I was going to need, and I knew that I wouldn't be coming home often. And so I bought a trunk. I found out after I got there that most people did not bring a trunk with them. But that trunk, they had a suitcase. Well, I was going to say a lot of them lived closer,
Right.
but they did come from all over the United States.
So you had a trunk with all your belongings.
Yes.
Which was what? Just
Well,
most clothes and.
I had that shipped. Of course, it didn't get on the train with me. But yes, I had my own suitcase. And the porter told me, showed me my place. And then you have your sitting quarters and you sit there with everybody else and look out the window. And when it's time to eat, they have a diner car.
Right.
And he would tell you how far you were away from, how many cars you had to go through before you got to the dining car. And going from one car to the other, it was like a canvas curtain or something that you stepped through, and then you were in between the cars. You couldn't see that you were there, but you knew you were. And it was louder. It was loud on the train with all that
Right.
clickety-clackety
Right.
all the way.
So at this point, you're 20 years old, first time ever on a train, and I don't know. It's just weird to me. Like I think we've talked about it before, but like there's so many things, at least from the first 20 years of your life, where these, at least that I remember, these crazy train experiences, right? That with your father, obviously, with the guy falling through the cracks of the train and getting run over. It's just, it's funny. Like these things just, not funny, but it's just interesting, I guess. Like these things keep popping up. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, this is a passenger train.
Right.
And the other was a locomotive
Difference.
where the guy fell off the top of the train.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Anything else from your first train trip that sticks out that you remember?
It took a long time, but it was exciting too. Right. I'd never been in a diner before, and this train was one of the old ones. There was a new one that came while I was in Washington that we took. Might as well know about that now. The Southerner was introduced, and it went from Baltimore to, I guess, New Orleans. It didn't stop. I had to get off in Meridian and take a bus trip from there on home. That was another experience. But the Southerner had an observation car. So past the diner car, you could go there and sit and have a drink and talk with other people who had that, wanted to sit back there, and you could see better.
Right. You're not listening to your Walkman or your iPhone or whatever or on your computer. You just, that's crazy.
I think I probably had a notepad in my purse, but but I was all dressed up. I didn't tell you I had to buy an outfit for the train.
Right. Was everybody else dressed up, or was this?
People did dress up.
Yeah.
And if you went on an airplane, you really got dressed up.
Right. Yeah. That changed, though. Like, when did that change?
I don't know, but
when did people stop dressing up for that? I
remember my first flight I took on one of those, home on leave and go back. And I flew on a jet. And they announced to you that it was a jet flight and that you should be careful, set your luggage you had on the seat, make sure it was secure, because you took off at such a fast that your stuff would fly to the back.
Right. All right. So let's back up. So
go back on the train.
You dressed up to get on your train.
Yes, I had a teal blue suit.
Got it.
With a hat to match.
Okay, good.
And
this is probably one of the reasons why I'm probably bad at doing interviewing stuff, because for me it's like the experiences are the interesting thing, or we talked about like the technology or the trains or whatever, and then when you get into like your fashion stuff, that's where for me it's like, okay, I don't know what to ask about it, you know what I mean? Like So I have to rely on you. Like,
You don't realize how important that is.
I don't realize how important that is. Look what I'm wearing right now compared to what you're wearing. You know what I mean? So that's good that you bring this up and talk about this stuff because I wouldn't otherwise
I
ask
thought
it.
you
So
were
you have
telling me let's skip this
no,
mundane
not
stuff.
at all, not at all. I want you to talk about that. So you have your teal blue suit with your hat to match. What else?
Yes. So I'm. Now I don't know what I was going to tell you about it.
Okay. Fine. Well, let's talk a little bit about because that is one thing that we kind of skipped over. But so, from your recollection, what is the fashion of the day for both men and women? Like, what were these people
okay.
wearing on the trains? You know.
Well, when I had to buy a few things for a wardrobe to go on this big trip. It is the big city. Mm-hmm. And I bought I had that money in the bank, you remember. So I took that out and I could spend money. I bought a new white, it was pretty, a white coat with a pretty big, what kind of fur? Some kind of pretty fur collar. Mm-hmm. It was a wrap with a tie.
Right.
And no slacks. We weren't wearing slacks.
Okay.
All the ladies still wore dresses.
All right. So wait, you said when you had your teal suit, what does that entail? So like a
Well,
I don't know what that means.
it was a skirt mid-calf length and a 3/4 coat type with it. So it was my ensemble.
Okay. So that's when you say suit, that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
So
And what about the gentlemen of the era? What are they wearing? What would I wear if I had to get on a train in 1940 as a 34-year-old man? What am I wearing? Suit.
a suit.
Right. Hat.
You'd have a suit.
Right.
Yes, one of those crazy hats.
Fedora or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, people dressed up for the train.
Okay. Okay. What else? Anything else from the train ride that you can think of? Were you nervous?
I was excited.
Just excited.
Everything was so new. You're anticipating. You don't know what.
Right.
So we arrive. After making those treks back and forth to the diner, if you went, it would be 4 or 5 cars that you had to walk through to get there. Mm-hmm. But so we arrive on Sunday morning about 7:00. We pull into Grand Central Station.
You remember
Union
that?
Station,
You remember
it's
that, or
called.
is this from research or from just?
Oh, I remember
you
that
remember
very
that.
vividly.
Okay.
Yes, because I know that there's a girl from Vicksburg that I had been in contact with, and she told me there was a place for me to stay in the place where she was staying, in a boarding house. Mm-hmm. And I knew that. I had never met her, but I guess we had written, somebody gave me her name because we didn't call, and I didn't send her a telegram. So I know that she is supposed to be there, and I didn't know where. I got off the train and had to walk into the station, and everybody was in such a hurry. And they were all both ways. Mm-hmm. And I'm from the South.
Right.
We're not in a big hurry, but I got myself in a hurry to keep up with the group. And when I got to wherever we had said we were going to meet, now that I don't remember, but I remember hearing the kids calling, "Hey, honey, over here."
How did they know? How did they know it was you?
Well, that I knew that the girl was to meet me, but I didn't know who would be there. Mm-hmm. But 3 or 4 of the people who she knew in the boarding house, and one guy had a car, and so they were there to meet me.
Yeah, but how did they know? Like, you just walk in and you're like just looking around. Were they like, "Oh, this Southern bumpkin, that's definitely her"? Like, how did they know that it was you? You know, you're not walking around with your sign with your name or whatever.
No, I don't know how. Why did I forget that detail? That's important.
Right. I mean,
But I do remember them yelling me, and I thought, this is it.
Right.
And I go over and I see these strange people, and we get in the car, and I don't remember getting my suitcase.
Right.
Maybe I had to. Oh, of course, the Red Cap took it for me.
Okay.
The Red Caps are like outside the train.
Right.
If they had a Red Cap, he was there to carry your suitcase or whatever.
Okay.
And you tipped him.
Right.
I don't know what I tipped him, but I'm sure I did if everybody else did.
Sure.
So we'd go from there to my new boarding house.
Right. With all your new friends.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So, so were you when you met all of these new people? Are you nervous? Are you still just excited? Are you trying to kind of acclimate and get used to like who are these people? Where are they from? How do we get to know each other? What was that like?
Questions.
Yeah.
Everybody's there in the same vein that you are.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know where, so it's always, where are you from?
Right. Right.
What city? How long have you been here? Where do you work? Because we all got there, and when you'd meet somebody, you had to know that.
Right.
Because all the different departments of the government was hiring people. And, the draft had started then for the war. And so there were soldiers coming from everywhere. All the transportation buses and trains were filled, and in Union Station, they were like that.
Was that kind of a shock to see at that point?
To see that many people. I knew it was like that at home,
Right.
but not to the extent that it was there.
Right. So
you were just one of them.
how long did it take you to kind of get your bearings and get till you felt comfortable in the new city and kind of settled in?
Well, it would be a few weeks.
Really? That long?
Yeah, because when I arrived and I met my new roommates from Boston, and that was different. And you all have your different accents.
Right.
You don't know what they're talking about. And they thought I had one.
Oh, amazing. Couldn't even have. Okay.
So we get settled in the boarding house, and I am to pay $40 a month for my room, which has cleaning service, and 2 meals, my breakfast and my dinner. Not bad.
Good
huh?
deal. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky to be, this boarding house was a big brick building on Massachusetts Avenue. And 1775 Mass Avenue.
Remember
and it was
that.
right near DuPont Circle.
Yeah.
You're familiar with this place.
Yeah.
And it was a big double house when you go in the entrance, and there was stairway on either side.
How long did you live there? How long were you at
I
the
only
boarding
lived
house?
there. I moved 3 or 4 times while I was there. I was there about a year, and there was another house on Mass Avenue down a couple blocks away that was a nicer looking building. And we decided we could move to that one. They'd had vacancies. And it cost a little bit more, but we were making money.
Oh yeah. What have you been back up there since, like, just to see it? You know what I mean? Because I'm sure it's still there,
I
right?
have been by a few times.
Yeah.
And it's
What's that like?
changed. And what was the girl's name that was here? That I asked her where she worked. One of Tricia's, Ross's, Shereen. And she said she worked on Mass Avenue, and I said, where? And she said, 1775.
That's crazy.
I said, I don't believe that.
I used to live there.
I used to live there.
Right.
And I showed her a picture of it in my book, a picture of me sitting out on the steps with
Yeah.
a bunch of other kids that it was a great time, though,
Yeah.
because it was just so
Right.
new. And Washington was so beautiful to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so well kept. All the buildings, of course,
Mm-hmm.
you know Washington. But it was when it's new to you.
Right. Did you miss home? Or were you so excited that you were there, you know?
I was. It's of course, I missed my family and my
Right.
friends for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't really have time to dwell on that because you're so busy learning
Right.
everything.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like so you've been talking about this, and then it reminds me of when I was, when I was 20. And like I think about it, kind of compare it to going away to college, but also when I was that age, that's when I went to Australia. And like you're talking about this long train ride and meeting all these people. And to me, I guess a lot of people nowadays, like I think that's sort of like the college experience, right? You move away, you meet all of these people and that
Exactly.
sort of thing. But for me, I didn't really get that when I went to University of Maryland. But when I went to Australia, it was, you know, it's literally halfway around the world from where we are sitting right now. And you get there in this strange place that you're not used to, and then you meet all of these people, and it's not only, I mean, they're from different countries. It's not just different parts of the United States. And so there's language barriers, and it's a new place. And I remember when I got there, for the first day or so, I had like a day to kill before like the work started that I had signed up for. And that was hard. I remember because there wasn't anybody there saying, like, hey, Jay, come here, get in our car and we'll come
can't
here.
imagine.
You know, it's just like I knew where I was staying, but I was by myself for that first day, and I remember thinking like, this is crazy. Of course, I'm also like getting off of, you know, jet lag of, you know, the 26-hour difference or whatever it is. And then, but I do remember once, like the next day, I met with all the people that I was going to be working with, and then we go stay at this house and start working. And I remember at that point, that's when the first day I'm there, it's like you have the homesickness and the anxiety and stuff. But then once the work starts and you have something to do, that's when I guess like you forget about that, and it's exciting, and you just kind of keep going with it. So I think I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I have not been back to Australia, so I don't know what that would be
you like to?
I don't know. You know, like I have the memories of it and things I've written about it and the photos, obviously. But I wonder, like, I'd love to go back and, you know, take my family there so they can see, at least in Tasmania where I spent most of the time. But it would be weird. It would be so different because so much of what I experienced there had to do with the not just the places that I visited, but the people that I spent time with there. And going there without them, those other people being there, I think would be kind of sad or kind of just kind of weird. But I would still like to go back. I think it would be cool. Okay, so we're in DC now. We're getting used to it. So you want to talk about what it was like, what the job was like, what you had to do when you first started working?
Yes, I was assigned to the Navy Department, and I had to, the next morning after I was there, got there on Sunday, so I had all that day. And then the next morning you go down, get your breakfast, and then you go out, stand outside and flag down a cab. Mm-hmm. And several of us would usually go in the same cab too, because we just worked that way. Mm-hmm. And I went to the Navy Department and had to go to the personnel department and get my ID and my badge. I still have that.
Really?
Should have put it on this morning.
Should have.
And then you were sent to, after you got all they asked for my birth certificate. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have one.
What'd you do?
Well, she told me 2 or 3 things that you can do. You can get your records from your high school. Mm-hmm. Oh, that one burned.
Right, that's right.
but you could have a relative older than you, 15 years older than you, or something like that, and different documents that you could get, and they gave you a certificate.
Right. Okay, good.
So that worked.
Okay.
So then you were all checked in, and then you went to the stenographer's pool, they called it, and you learned the Navy way to type a letter, the form, and all that. And you knew how to use the stencil, cut a stencil to make a lot of copies. The government needs a lot of copies. And we didn't have whiteout
Right.
to take care of your little mistakes.
Right.
You make a mistake, you got to start over because you've got all those tissues in there to.
So did that make you like super, super careful about
Yes.
what you're doing? And do you think any of that stuff like bleeds over, filters over into other parts of your life? You know, the work that you did
There's
there.
always
Does that make you more of a person who's like, I need to be more precise? Tricia says no.
There's always the comparison. You remember you had to do that.
Okay. Is it fun? Like, is it like,
It
this is
is.
cool. I like this job. This is exciting.
It is. Well, it's always something new. But after while you were in the pool, and all these new people are there in their new offices from all over the country as well, and they will need some help, and they'll call the steno pool, and they will send you to whoever they think is ready for that, and you'll go take a letter from somebody that you've never heard of. And that one of those was quite an experience for me because the man had a Boston accent, and he talked fast, and he was very serious. He was all about business when I went in there. And he said he was dictating something about the Wadman Park Hotel, and I didn't know what he was saying. I couldn't put it in the letter if I didn't know what it was saying. And he says, "Have you never heard of the Wadman Park?"
Right.
And I said, "No." I've been here 2 months from
Right.
Louisiana. From that,
Right. So what'd you do? Did you get in trouble? Was he like, get someone else in here? Or was it
Well,
like...
I finished. He spelled it for me or whatever and
Okay,
said it.
yeah.
And I got through that, but he didn't call me back. Somebody else. No, he didn't want me back anymore. He had somebody.
That's okay.
Well, there were many more who were more experienced and
Right.
knew
Right.
the Shoreham Hotel also.
Right.
So, actually lived a couple of miles from the Wadman Park.
Well, now you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
So,
What else? What other sort of like job-related stuff do you remember?
well, I had several different jobs while I was there. I remember one. I had the first boss was, he was he was the head of the section that I was in, but he was so gruff, and he was swearing and to all the people in. But he liked me, so I did a good job for him, and so I thought he was pretty great. And then I moved from there to another section, the Bureau of Aeronautics. They all had nicknames, BuAir,
Right.
BuPers,
Right.
all this.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember all this stuff.
Yeah.
When you're new, you got to know which one to go to.
Yeah.
And I worked for him for a while, and then I was in the Bureau of Aeronautics engineering division, oxygen section.
That sounds
All of
important.
this to get to work, and I worked there for a year or so, and then one of the guys that worked in there said to me, his girlfriend worked in the Secretary of the Navy's office, and she needed somebody to be her assistant. Would I be interested? And of course. So I go down, we walk down to the front of the building where the Secretary of the Navy stuff. This is a pretty big deal. And so we go in. It was really called the mail and file room, but you were also expected to go in and take dictation or type, get through your works. But you also had this was the personal mail section for the Secretary of the Navy. Anything that came to him, we had to check it in. You had to stamp it with the time stamp. And you had to make a record of what correspondence came in. And it was cross-filed so that you could get it 2 different ways. And we had a little squawk box on our desk that...
What's that?
It's... the microphone in the Secretary of the Navy's on his desk, and he pushed a button, and our little squawk box
That's what it's called. It's okay. Yeah.
buzzed, and then we would answer, and he would say, Miss Williamson, will you come in here with your book, please?
Right.
And my notebook.
I didn't know that's what that was called. Like I hadn't heard that term before.
Hey,
That's
it just
funny.
came to me
That's
at that
good.
moment,
Good.
and so that's what we
We're
call it.
learning. Okay.
So we'd go in, and then his office was directly across the hall from ours, and a Marine stood guard outside his office. And when you went inside, there was another Marine lieutenant who sat at the desk, the reception desk. And if somebody came to see the Secretary of the Navy, they had to show their ID before they go in, and then he would direct them to whomever they wanted to see, his assistants or to see him.
And so, what year is this at this point? Like, what time? When did you start that job? You remember?
Well, I stayed there till I left, so it was, and I left in 45. So this was in 1944, say.
Okay, so that's a lot of time since since we've just traveled by train, and now we're already in 1944 or 45. So talk about some other stuff then. Like talk about the fun, like not just fun, but like the extracurricular activities and the social life and that sort of stuff that you from that time. What was stuff that you guys did?
Well, before we leave there, let me tell you, the first office that I was assigned to was, it was called the Secretary of the Navy for Air. And this is before the Navy, they had an air, what do you call it now? The Secretary of the Air Force. And
So that was before there was an Air Force?
it's Secretary of the Navy for Air.
Okay.
And it was just for the airplanes. But
Okay.
that didn't last even a year after I moved in there. And it was part of the Secretary of the Navy's office then. There was a Secretary of the Navy, there was an Undersecretary of the Navy, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and a Secretary for Air.
Yeah. I know, it's funny, like you mentioned that starting at a new job, especially working in the government, there's so much stuff that you have to remember. Just the acronyms alone are crazy. And I know, just from working at other jobs, there's always like that onboarding period where you have to learn stuff. But like I remember when I was working for University of Maryland, we had like a specific military advising office, and it was just the stuff that those advisors and that team had to learn is just crazy. It's just it's such its own culture, and it's just something that I struggled to get. But so I can't even imagine.
Well, this was comfortable there, but because the girl that I worked with was just a lovely person, and there were just the two of us in that office right at that time. We did get more help further down the road. But the Secretary of the Navy's office, he had his own kitchen galley, they call it.
Right.
And a big dining room. And
like in the office?
in his suite. of offices.
Oh, wow.
And it was a nice place.
Yeah.
And they did, when they would call you, you never knew exactly which one of his assistants might want you. He had 4 or 5 who had their own offices. So it was a little complex there.
All right.
But they did, and his chef was from the Philippines.
Wait, what? He had his own chef?
He has a big dining room. He entertains other the admirals, the highest admirals in the land.
In the land, okay.
Yes,
What?
and at sea.
Okay. Okay. All right. So wait a second. So then I think we need to talk about this more because I'm just not understanding it. So like, this is his office. This isn't. You know, he didn't live there. This isn't a residence or anything like that. Right. So okay. So he's got, of course, like, you know, you have these visitors and these guests, so you have to have this appearance. So you have, but he has his own chef.
Yes,
Okay.
and his who is there to prepare nice meals for the other dignitaries. He's a member of the cabinet, and there aren't too many of them. But at this big dining room, when I resigned, they gave me a luncheon, and they gave me gifts, 2 place settings of my sterling silver pattern I had picked out on a whim one time, you know, and I was so nervous, I couldn't eat my soup.
Why?
I just couldn't. My hand was shaking, so.
Why were you nervous?
I was with all these people. It was all for me, and I was leaving. And you wouldn't be nervous?
I don't know.
Oh.
Me versus you. You don't like the limelight and the big parties and all of that stuff? Is that what you're telling me?
That's not what I'm telling you. Well, I guess I just hadn't ever been in that situation before.
Right. Okay.
But yes.
Anything else about that?
His chef, let me tell you, his chef used to come in my office early in the morning after I'd been there, and would bring me a hot cinnamon roll and coffee. Nice. And if they had a nice luncheon sometime and there was food that somebody didn't show up, he would come over and ask me if I wanted something. One day he said to me, "Delma, do you like noodles?"
Right.
And I said, "Maxie, what are you saying?" "Noodles." And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Noodles, noodles." No, I didn't understand people with accents.
I bet they were delicious, though. All right. What? Anything else about the job, or just about working there?
Well, about working there, they used to have dances once a month, I think, for different states, and so that you could go and meet other people from your state that you hadn't met before. And when they had one from Louisiana, Maxie was said he was going, and would I go with him? This is a little Filipino that's not very tall, and I'm 5'8".
That's true, right?
And I can see myself dancing with him. Because I'd always been self-conscious about dancing with somebody shorter than I was. Right. And so I told him that I wasn't going to be able to go.
Oh.
But he was a nice guy.
Heartbreaking. So did you just not go then?
No, I didn't go.
Okay.
I never did go to any of them for some reason.
Oh, well, it's all right. Can't win them all. Poor Maxie. All right, what else? Anything else from the job? Can we talk about the social life now? The fun stuff?
So, my social life.
You did stuff outside of working for those 5 years, so what did you guys do?
Well, where I lived in the boarding house, there were many other kids there. I was trying to think of, I don't know exactly how many. There were usually 2 to a room, and there were like 6 or rooms on. No, there were 3 floors there, so I was on the first floor, and the front of the building, excuse me, with a big 3-way triple, that is triple, windows, big windows. It was a lovely place.
Okay.
Okay, so the guy next to me,
Right.
need to hear about my room, that
Okay.
guy. The war was going on. I didn't tell you about when the war started. But he was in the room, a single guy, and in a single room right there. And our bedroom was right next to his, and the walls were not very thick. You could hear through them. And he kept his radio on all night. He would fall asleep, but I could hear it right next to him. And he wasn't there. We didn't run into him very often. I don't even know where he worked. But he was gone one weekend, and my roommate and I, Mary Flanagan from Boston, we
Shout
decided
out to Mary Flanagan. Okay.
And we saw that his car was gone, and he was usually gone for the weekends. So we decided to look in his room and see where that radio was. We went in his room and were looking around, and he came home.
You got busted.
We got busted, and we said,
Amateurs.
what the problem was that we were hearing that noise.
What did you intend to do? What were you going to do? Turn the radio off? Unplug it? Steal it? Break it? What were you going to do? He comes in and there's just 2 girls in there, and he's going to be like, what the hell is going on here? What were you thinking?
Well, he was very nice, and we said, we were just wondering where that noise was, and he said he'd move it.
Yeah.
No problem. He would
Just
take it
ask.
away from that wall. We
Good
were
grief.
saved. It was embarrassing.
Flanagan getting you into trouble.
Yeah, it was her fault.
Yeah. All right, that's kind of funny. What else? Where were you? So wait, at that point, where were you living? Was that at the boarding house?
This is on Mass Avenue.
Okay.
We called it Mass Avenue.
Right. Locals.
Yeah.
Get it.
Well, I did go. You asked what we did. I did go home with her to Boston for a weekend.
That's cool.
Yeah, she had a first cousin, I guess it was, who was a priest. Oh yeah, the priest, the people who lived that were studying to be priests. I've forgotten what they call that, where they are, seminary, whatever
Yeah.
they are. Okay.
Close enough. Good.
And he and his friends used to come visit Mary and her cousin Nora, and they just loved coming. They're studying to be priests,
Right.
but they're coming to visit us, and they have an awful good time while they're there, And so, okay, so he was going to be confirmed as a priest and have big ceremony. And I'm a Baptist, so I go to my Baptist church, and they go to their Catholic church. I went with them, I think, a couple of times, but
Right.
they never would come to mine because they weren't allowed to come into Baptist church.
Wait, as Catholics, they're not allowed, or Baptists won't let them?
The Catholics won't allow it.
Okay.
The reason, because if they ask me to come to their church, and then I don't stay there, I might quit going to my own church, and then I'd be lost forever because I wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
That's trivial.
Okay.
But I did go to that. We went on the train to Boston, and went to the ceremony
Wait. Back up. You skipped over the fun stuff. I want to hear what these seminary boys are doing. Like, they have some fun. They party. What are they doing?
We didn't have no more than the soft drinks and snacks. Not drinkers.
Okay.
But we had, move on to another step.
Okay.
We had many parties at our boarding house.
Mm-hmm.
At night, we had a record player, and the music was wonderful.
What kind of music?
The big band area. And we used to play those records and dance until probably midnight. We had to go to work the next morning, and everybody was in the same boat that had to do that.
Right.
But that was so fun, and we learned to jitterbug, and we just, we went to movies together. We could go to movies, go out, two girls could go out at night, walk down to the, from my house to the bus, the route with the bus on it, and go to movies at 9 o'clock at night, come home safe and no worries.
Those were the days.
That was then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of movies were out then? What came out
Great
then?
musicals and dramas.
Right.
Oh, the good, big, wonderful stars were
Like who? You remember any names?
No, of course I'd lose the name. The Dance of Fred Astaire movies.
That was in the early 40s.
And
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
all this.
What other stuff did you do? What other sort of fun stuff? Like, what was the most fun thing that you would like to do?
Well, there's so much to do in Washington. There's so much you've never seen. We had all the museums were free. You could go walk to, downtown. We went to the zoo. We didn't live very far from the zoo, and we'd take a bus and go there. And we went to, in Virginia, there was a place that we could take a bus or a streetcar and go sit on the rocks at the waterfall. And you didn't swim there.
What kind
I'm
of
just
stuff?
jumping from one thing
No,
to
that's
another. I'm
fine.
thinking,
What kind of stuff do you do on the weekends? Is it
one of the girls came in the Secretary of the Navy's office. She was a Marine from New Orleans, and her name was Poche, and we called her Poochie. That was her nickname. So
Cute.
she came and worked there, and she lived at the Meridian Hotel. They took that over and furnished her a place to live. And it had an indoor swimming pool.
Woo!
I know, and I was her friend, and I would go home with her, and we would swim in the indoor swimming
That's
pool.
fancy. That's cool. All right.
Yeah.
Good. Anything else that you can remember? Fun stuff. Weekend activities. Did you go to church every Sunday?
I went to church also. I didn't go for a while, but then I did start going. It wasn't too long.
Okay.
At 16th and O Street, and President Truman used to come to the same church, so I said we went to church together today.
That's funny.
He and the presidential party would be ushered in and seated, and then the other congregation came and went. But when it was over, they would announce that please remain seated until the presidential party
That's got to be crazy.
exit.
Did you
That was
know that?
cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, did you know that that's where he went to church the first time you were there, or was it just like, what the heck is going on here?
He didn't come every Sunday,
Right.
and I was always surprised when he would be
Right.
there.
That's pretty crazy.
But
Can't
it
imagine
was-
that. That's
yeah.
funny. Cool. Anything else you can think of? Fun kind of
We
stuff.
went to the botanical gardens. There was just so many things you could do.
Right.
And there was always the movies.
Mm.
And went to the zoo. I said we went to the
What
zoo.
about like, is there any other like downtime, leisure time? You know what I mean? Because so like, equate it back to my Australia trip. So during the week when I was in Australia, we would go off on these just work days or whatever. Sometimes we would be based out of a single house where we kind of stayed for a couple months.
Oh.
But sometimes we would travel an hour or two away and camp out for the week and work at a specific site. But always we would be back on the weekends, or if we were staying locally in the town, we would have the evenings to do whatever we wanted. And sometimes we would go out to bars, or we would go to go to the movies or the show. But there was a lot of time where it was downtime. And of course, like, we were doing manual labor, so we were exhausted most of the time anyway. But sometimes we would take like little day trips or something, sightseeing kind of things. But there's also downtime where we'd be watching TV, or like I did a lot of reading then, because that's all you could do a lot of times. So what about that? Was there like downtime where you weren't out and about doing everything?
Well, there would be times for that, but we did our laundry or whatever
Right.
we had to do,
Right.
that kind of stuff on the weekends. And there was always so many people around that could, there was never any lack of entertainment.
Right. So there's always stuff to do.
Yeah.
Got to do what other
We
sort of
went
like
out to dinner. I had my first glass of wine, I think,
right.
when we went out to dinner. Went to the National Theater, and went there
Right.
several times. And then we went to this little place near there that they had spaghetti. We wanted spaghetti, and we said, what kind of wine would you like? And of course, I had my Muscatel.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think I told you about that.
Yeah.
Well, you don't forget the first glass of wine you ever had.
Right. I don't know the first glass of wine I ever had. I know. I'm trying to think. I think when I was in Australia was the first time that I legally drank, because that's right. Because when I was in Australia, I was 20. Is that right? Yeah, I was 20. So it was a year before, or it was a couple months before I turned 21. So I could go to Australia and have my first legal drink. I remember that. Yeah, that's cool. It was not Muscatel though. It was I think it was a local Australian beer.
Oh,
I think it was at Cooper's Sparkling Ale or something like that. I think you can get it now. And if you get it, it has like the way like they ferment it. It's still got like sediment in the bottle in the glass. So you pour it and there's like little chunky stuff in it. It's still really good. You can probably get it at a liquor store, but anyway.
they didn't have any filters.
They did. This is just the fancy way that they made it. But this was still before like the whole craft beer craze has now started. But I think you can still get it because people like it. But anyway.
Well, I used to. There was a lot of letter writing going on, because
Right.
you couldn't call home.
Right.
You had to write.
Right.
And I would write these long letters. Always give too many details, I
Right.
know. But they would love them, and my big family at home would send my letters to the next person, send it on to
That's
another
interesting.
one, so they would all keep up. Sometimes it would be a long time till I'd hear from anybody, and
Right.
I've written it. They've all heard it and all discuss it.
Right.
So when am I going to write another one?
Right.
Nobody writes them.
Frustrating. Yeah. I never thought about that. That's pretty interesting that it works that way, that they forward those letters on to other people.
Oh, yes, and they all knew what was going on in my life, but
Right.
I had a lot to say.
Right.
And rationing was going on.
Oh, really?
We had a war going on.
So how did that impact? Was that impacting family back home more than it was impacting you in Washington?
Probably did, but we couldn't get the things that we were used to getting.
Like what?
There was, in foods, sugar and butter and meats. You didn't have as many meats.
What do you?
But then shoes.
Of course,
What
back
are you
to the
gonna
shoes.
do?
Right.
They rationed. You only could get a certain number of pair of shoes. And the stockings. Oh, pathetic.
Wait,
That- They invented because they were using everything for the war
Right.
benefit, and we had a leg makeup. That's when they started making makeup for legs, and all the stockings had seams up the back. They hadn't ever learned to make those kind, so we would buy our leg makeup and cover our legs, and if you got real good, you could put a line up the back of your leg to center. But
wow, that is crazy.
well, you know, if you're wearing stockings with seams in them, the problem is keeping that seam straight.
Right.
It's like almost as bad as if somebody's slip was showing under their dress.
Oh my gosh.
Be perfectly dressed, and then you see that slip.
That's crazy. The makeup with the drawing of the seam. That's nuts, man.
We did everything we could.
What, I mean, so as far as the rationing goes, what was that like? Like, do you remember, was it like a hardship? Was it an annoyance? When it ended, was it like, finally back to normal? Like, what was going through that, you know?
Yes, about the shoes and the stamps. We bought stamps too and kept in a book for the war. But one of my sisters had written me a letter, and she couldn't get a pair of shoes. That was the hardship. The ones she needed, she couldn't get. So I told her I would try to get her a pair in Washington. We had a lot more shoe stores than they did, and so she sent me a shoe stamp. And then when I went to use it, it wasn't in the book. In a book, it was, and they didn't want to take it. And I had to go they would say, well, if you go to the stamp office, you know, maybe they'll give you correct it for you, you know. And I walked all over town. I had the letter for a long time that I wrote her about my experience, of how far I had walked and not get it there. And then the day I got it, the newspaper came out that said stamp endings. This, you know, as of today.
Right.
It was kind of ironic.
That is ironic. So, like, but even so, like, so how long did rationing go on for? Do you remember?
Well, that was...
Was it before you left for D.C.?
Pardon me?
Was it before you left to go to Washington, D.C.?
Yes, it was,
So
because
that's
that
going
was...
on even then.
I remember that particular incident when it was the headlines. That was probably in 45.
Yeah, but when did it...
Before I left Washington.
But what about before you left? Like, was it going on when you were in Mississippi, or were you were in Louisiana?
I don't really know.
That's crazy. I can't imagine what that would be like now, you know? Or if there's anything even in my generation to equate that to.
Yeah.
You know?
There was about the rationing when I worked in the Secretary of the Navy's office. I had a letter from my sister, Earl B.'s mother, and he said, lost our train of thought.
That's okay.
What? Oh, okay. He was about 10 or 12, I guess, then. And he wanted a BB gun. And they didn't make them for kids anymore. So I mentioned it when I went into the office to one of the officers. And he said, we probably can handle that.
Wow.
So he had somebody in there, called the chief of police in Washington, and said, you know, have you taken any BB guns from any kids?
Right.
Yeah, well, drop one by.
That's sneaky.
They gave me a BB gun, which I had to wrap and mail.
Right. I was going to say, how do you
I
get it
wonder
down
how
there?
I wrapped that.
don't know.
Send that gun through the mail.
Right. Can you imagine now?
But he remembers it.
He
when I
still
visited-
remembers that?
When I visit, talk with Earl B., he remembers when
That's funny.
he got the BB gun from me.
That's cute. Nice.
He's almost 80 now.
He still remembers that went a long way. All right, cool. Let's wrap it up for there since we've been going kind of long this morning. And we could still pick it up next time. There's still lots of Washington D.C. talk I think we can cover. Anything else that you want to add for this morning?
I think that's enough.
That's good. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay.
See ya.